There's also going to be some look at the new world order that President Trump is creating. And, a lot of countries that were, whining about tariffs 6 months ago and saying that President Trump was going to harm their economies had pretty good years. And I think it's in part because people recognize that President Trump has made it so that we are the shining city on the hill again. We are the engine of global economic growth because the U.S. is really that strong again.
So that was White House Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett, who's also potentially in the running to be the next Fed chair, when he was asked what to expect from President Trump's upcoming speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Want to bring in our political panel to end the week. Matthew Bartlett, who was a former U.S. State Department appointee during Trump's first term, also with us, former chief Pentagon spokesperson for the Biden administration, Chris Marr. Thanks, both of you, for coming on. I know we had a conversation at the end of the year about what might happen on the geopolitical front. We're going to come back to that because a lot has happened in just the first 2 weeks of the year. But let's start on this question of affordability and the way that the Trump administration, A, seems keen to be trying to make a policy turn on this, but B, are trying to tell the American public in the same way the Biden administration did, no, the economy is actually good, even as Americans are saying, I just don't quite feel that way. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I think, 2024, there was an election, Republicans came back to power on affordability, right? Yes. And there was just to use a financial term, irrational exuberance from the Republican Party for the better part of a year up until that last election in November in Jersey and Virginia. And then you saw, wow, that same powerful notion that brought us here to town might drive us out of town. And then this week alone, Donald Trump just started, flinging his spaghetti on the wall strategy on affordability. Sounded like Liz Warren. Credit card.
Called her.
Credit card capping, home ownership, private equity, interest rates. So he's all over the place. There's definitely a schism with the Republican Party about how to handle that, and very mixed messages as we go to, of all places, Davos.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so this message potentially landing at Davos at a time when Trump is, at some points, taking some Democratic policies on housing, on credit cards, and seemingly trying to turn to progressives. My former colleagues at NBC had a great piece about this week to almost seek a fix to the affordability problem that I will say Republicans on the Hill are not putting central to the start of a 2026 midterm year. I mean, you must have been confused reading some of these headlines this week as a Dem.
I think the problem is this administration is confused about how to fix the affordability crisis. I mean, each time that his staff tries to get him in line, Donald Trump goes out there and calls affordability a hoax.
Right.
He goes and flips off a union worker in Detroit. He does all of these things time after time to show that he's unable to focus on what the American people are actually focused on, which is kitchen table issues. It's on being able to afford your groceries. It's on being able to afford your gas. It's on being able to afford your health insurance. Donald Trump calls it a hoax. He's focused on geopolitical issues that don't concern the American people day to day. And no matter how hard his staff tries to keep him in line, he keeps veering off in these directions.
Can we, before we go to those geopolitical issues that are certainly dominant here, how is a message like the one that Kevin Hassett is giving, defending tariffs, the one that Trump is giving, saying that affordability is both a hoax, but also that his tariffs are a really positive force in the economic world? He's about to go to Davos, as you mentioned, with the top tier of the banking and economics world. How is a message like that going to land after the year that we've seen here?
It's almost a schizophrenic message. You have some actual indicators in the economy. Stock market, all-time high. Unemployment, relative low. Inflation, maybe getting tamed. Just saw CNBC reporting the deficit, in part because of the tariffs, came down last month. But again, what are you feeling? And Donald Trump is not a I feel your pain type of guy. He's I feel your rage. He's now projecting this wonderful economy. We've seen this before. Democrats tried the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yep.
A lot of this is messaging, very difficult. A lot of this is governing, equally as difficult with some of these very powerful issues around affordability.
Yeah, and on the tariffs piece, remember, the Supreme Court still has to rule, and there is a world in which they say all of that revenue that Trump is touting is going to have to come back, and it's already seemingly tied up in a lot of places. That makes that really difficult. Let's turn to the geopolitics of it, because we were talking about the potential for something in Venezuela at the end of the year. Obviously, we've seen one piece of what that something might be. What do you make of the way that this administration has frankly been given, I think, a fair amount of leeway leeway on Capitol Hill for not identifying clearly what the end game is, and certainly not even how quickly they want to transition to democratic elections in Venezuela. I mean, your administration grappled with the Maduro problem. You handled it obviously quite differently. But what do you make of what the Trump administration has done here?
Yeah, I think going back to what we were just saying on affordability, I don't think this administration has a plan on Venezuela either. It was the case before the invasion to take out Maduro and install this regime change. But you still see it in the discussions with the oil executives last week. You see it with the discussions yesterday. What I saw coming out of that meeting is an opposition leader who wants a seat at the table and is doing everything she can to enamor herself with the president of the United States, who doesn't probably even understand most of these complex issues that we're talking about, but can be easily wooed by a gift of a Nobel Peace Prize that he has not earned.
And it doesn't seem like it necessarily worked. The person who does understand Venezuela as such a key issue, in large part because of the Florida of it all in this administration, is Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is one heck of a motion in our own hemisphere here. I'm not sure if it would be my call, but I'm also not sure it's wrong. And you know, I'm also not sure this is regime change. You know, what have I heard referred to as a cabinet shuffle, reshuffling down in Venezuela. Yesterday was an amazing meeting where, yes, you had Machado give apparently the Nobel Peace Prize to Trump. I think that's reporting. But then she went on the Hill. And had an amazing meeting with Republicans and Democrats. I think Ruben Gallo, I think even Senator Rick Scott of Florida, both said, we want to go to Venezuela with you. So we'll see what happens. You're right. I'm not sure there's a very clear plan, but I'm also not sure that it's going poorly right now. So let's see here, a wait-and-see approach. It's certainly been provocative, but it might work out.
Yeah, and I think that is actually the general theme that I've heard from Republicans on Capitol Hill. Many of them, though, going a step further than the administration. And again, I've thought this is fascinating. They are so clear that they want Machado to end up being the leader there. And they are watching Trump very optimistically. They're giving him the space for the patience to do the transition, to try to figure out what he wants to do on oil. But I do think that at a certain point that patience could run out, especially for those who have had close relationships with Machado. And especially now, as some lawmakers in bipartisan fashion, you're right, are toying with how can we go to Venezuela and show support? So many key questions for us to keep grappling with. Matt Bartlett, Chris Marr, thank you both for coming on, helping us to try to understand them. Early